It's Night Week here over at CityCast Las Vegas, which is a special series sponsored by the Neon Museum. You know them, they're a Vegas institution that brings our history to light. And few things are more iconic than having a night out in Las Vegas. But as tourism dips and our economy takes a hit, could our nighttime economy be even better if we had someone in charge of the city after dark? Today on CityCast Las Vegas, I talk with Raheem Manning. He's Philadelphia's first director of nighttime economy, about whether Las Vegas, like Philly, needs a night mayor. It's Tuesday, August 12th. I'm David Figler, and here's what Las Vegas is talking about. Okay, Raheem, I know what a nightmare is because I've had quite a few, especially with our economy, but what is a nightmare?
Yes, and I often have to put a time in there because if you say it too fast, people will think I'm Philly's bad dream. But no, I am the nighttime mayor or the senior director for nighttime economy. And my job is to oversee the city's policies, investments, support for businesses and people that operate after 5 p.m.
What made you go, oh, Philly needs this?
Yeah, David. Well, the funny thing is I am Philly's first ever nightmare, but I also helped create the position. During the pandemic, as you all know, cities were grappling with, how to exist, right? Especially in a social environment, right? So our mayor at the time had zeroed out our arts and culture budget, which enraged a lot of people because arts and culture organizations were getting creative, right? We were doing Zoom things and, still finding ways to fill that social need that people have, right? And during my time as co-chair of the Art and Culture Task Force, looking at how our city could, open back up after the pandemic, and especially when it comes to our artists and our creatives and our nighttime economy, our nightlife, right? I learned of this position called the nighttime mayor, which had first ever started in Amsterdam. Mirik Milan was the first nightmare ever. And then it had been springing up through Europe, and there were a couple that were here in the U.S. So I reached out and I asked them, what do you do for your city? What do you, what's the job? And I learned that they were the shepherds of making sure that cities were true 24-hour cities. Now, what's a true 24-hour city? It's a city that has a plan for what it looks, feels, and operates like at 2 p.m. and at 2 a.m. And that the people that operate at 2 a.m. have the same access to city services and quality of life as the people who operate at 2 p.m. And so I thought that concept was needed in Philadelphia for us to not only come out the pandemic, for us to continue to be a globally competitive city. So I wrote a proposal to City Council to create this position of nighttime mayor or director of nighttime economy. And that's how we got our first nighttime mayor here in the city of Philadelphia. And I am fortunate to be able to serve.
You literally made your own job. I love that about you. Yeah. You're like, you know what we need? Me. And you did it.
Yeah.
And what you're saying really resonates here in Vegas. I am wondering, is managing the economy of the nighttime really that different from the economy of the daytime?
Yeah, it's different. There's a lot of unique things that happen under the cover of darkness, right? You have to manage people's perceptions that are a little bit more exaggerated when it's nighttime, when people are moving out at night. You have to look at lighting, transportation, and design in a different way, right? One of the things I put as an analogy out there to help people understand the differences is, hey, David, you own a shoe store, right? David sells shoes. And during the day, when I walk into your shoe store, your responsibility to me as your customer is from the time that little doorbell rings, the ding dong when I walk in, until the time I leave out, right? And so you can provide amazing
with two pairs of shoes, by the way, because I'm a good salesman. Right? You bet.
Yeah. So that's your responsibility as a business owner, as a shoe store operator that operates during the day. But at night, if I am a venue that is operating at night, or bar or club or entertainment or show, my responsibility to you starts the moment you park your car. If the parking lot is dark, if the street is dark on the way there, you feel unsafe, and you are tying all of that perception to going to David's lounge now, right? And then when you leave, I have to also think sure that it's light and it's designed and it's well for you to get back to your car or to your Uber or to whatever. And that perception is all about how you think about my business and how you think about it, right? Whether you felt safe, whether it's real or perceived unsafetyness, but that's something that I have to think about. So when you look at managing a nighttime economy, you have to think about all of those things, the perception things that matter, the lighting part, the design, where people are going to park, how they move, how they walk, that, you sometimes just naturally don't have to worry about during the daytime. So there is a uniqueness in it there.
Yeah. So what does your typical work day, or I guess work night, look like for you? Are you actually up all night?
So I, a lot of people think that. One, I don't clock in when the mayor clocks out. The mayor never clocks out, right? So we have our mayor. During the day, I'm usually meeting with city stakeholders or departments to play liaison or translator of what's happening at night, right? At night, I'm out meeting with businesses or constituents who are operating at night who may have issues or things that they need the city to see to help them navigate. And so I kind of split those days up in that aspect. So at night, we're out, I'm either at events or I'm talking with owners of venues or even residents who may have issues, right? And then during the day, I'm utilizing city services to solve these problems because, again, city services primarily stop at 5, but yet there's a whole part of our city that needs help and support and, need eyes on things. And so I play that liaison between the two.
Now, it does sound like you do not sleep, sir. Do you get little cat naps, or how do you do it?
I sleep. I don't require much sleep just naturally as a person, but, I get my rest in.
Yeah. One of the interesting words you just used was translator. So what are you translating, and how have you become good at that?
Listen, I think that is probably the epitome of what this role is, right? Being able to translate what is happening at night to daytime languages. We unfortunately, have cities that, they govern from 9 to 5. They make laws from 9 to 5, and they hope they work from 5 to 9. A lot of our legislators don't go out at night as much, or, they may not understand, because when you're looking at nighttime economy, especially the cultural part of it, the gatherings, the clubs, the bars, it changes so much that, the laws don't keep up. So when I say translate is, if I have a venue owner to say, hey, I got a fine from license and inspection, we call L&I here, or code, compliance in other cities.
Sure.
And I don't understand what they're saying. They're saying, I don't have this, but I don't. Could you come look at it and tell me what I need? So if my role didn't exist, then they would have to sacrifice sleep, because they're sleeping during the day a lot of times because they're operating their business at night, to go find L&I or find code and ask them, hey, I see you put this on a paper. I don't know what you're talking about. And they're going to have to go back and forth of code telling them without showing them and them trying to understand. Well, what we do is we try to bridge that gap, and we go out and David's like, hey, they said this isn't right, but this is how this has to be because of X, Y, and Z. I look at that, I observe it, and then I go and talk to code. What is the goal? What are we trying to solve for here with this violation, and how can we help the business owner understand and get to that? And so a lot of that is translating that in an aspect, right? It's also looking at the needs, right? Like we need to support our nighttime businesses, and we do that with programs and grants and all. So I translate the needs of nighttime economy businesses into programs, into grants, right? That specifically help them thrive and grow. We just released an economic impact study here in the city of Philadelphia, the first of its kind, and it showed that our nighttime economy has a $26.1 billion economic impact. We generate $26.1 billion. And so that is an opportunity. That's where a lot of our tax revenue, over $500 million in tax revenue, comes from nighttime economy workers and wages. And so how do we support that economy so that it continues to grow, so that we continue to grow as a city, we continue to become more competitive? And the translating part is a big part of it, making sure that we are putting programs that speak the language of nighttime economy, that meet the needs of nighttime economy. And so that's a big part of what that is. And when I say translate.
Hey, Las Vegas, ever look for a sign of what to do? Well, here's one, literally. The Neon Museum is offering a limited time deal just for Nevada residents. 50% off admission to one of the most iconic must-see spots in the city. That's right, half off to explore Vegas history through the glow of vintage neon signs. Just swing by the box office, show your Nevada ID, and you're in. No promo codes, no online hoops to jump through, just a classic local appreciation deal. Make it a night with friends, bring visiting family, or finally check it off your Vegas bucket list. Visit the Neon Museum and let the lights of old Vegas shine for you. Now, this dazzling deal won't last forever, so grab your tickets now and experience the glow before it's gone. Again, to apply the discount, just bring your Nevada State ID card to the Neon Museum and purchase your ticket at the door. To learn more, visit neonmuseum.org. One ticket for valid ID.
Got any fun trips coming up? One thing you probably haven't put on your packing list is learning the language. But with Babbel, you can start talking in just a few weeks. I'm David Plotz, the CEO of CityCast, and I've been learning Spanish with Babbel. And I also just persuaded my friend who's going to France this fall to learn French with Babbel, but that is another story. Babbel is extremely fun and intuitive. It's like having a private tutor in your pocket. Handcrafted by over 200 language experts, Babbel's lessons are voiced by real native speakers and built with science-backed cognitive tools and interactive features to fit any learning style. I love a lot of the different Babbel features. The Babbel games for sentence building, Babbel speech recognition, which helps me get the pronunciation right. And now I'm really into Babbel's word of the day, which greets me on the homepage of the app. Every day, a new word revealed like a little surprise with a sentence to help contextualize it. It's like a daily treat for me. Studies from Yale, Michigan State, and other leading universities continue to prove that Babbel works. One study found that using Babbel for 15 hours is equivalent to a full semester at college. Look, I want you to learn another language. So I'm teaming up with Babbel to gift you 55% off subscriptions, but only for CityCast listeners at babbel.com/CityCast. Get up to 55% off at babbel.com/CityCast. Spelled BABBEL.com/CityCast. Babbel.com/CityCast. Rules and restrictions may apply.
You know, I think timing wise, having you on this podcast is really interesting. I'm gonna tap into your mind for a second, see how the Philly Nightmare would handle a situation real quick, because we have a burgeoning arts district in our downtown core, and there are people who have lived down here, myself included, for decades, and we really love the vibrancy that's happening. But sometimes, and Vegas is a little later than other cities. We can go to 2, 3, 4 in the morning. So they did waive the noise ordinance that any city normally has for this little area. Well, now this area is so hot that there's a lot of residential going up. Lots of residential coming in. And the people who are developing the residential are like, yeah, we need to put that noise ordinance back. So there's a little tension between the nightclubs that kind of made the scene in the area hot and the developers who are trying to put, bodies down there and rooftops for taxes and all that. So, they're a little bit of fighting going on. What you think? Because this is a nighttime issue, right?
Yeah,
this is
it is
10 o'clock on. What do you think?
So I think you are talking about a very prevalent issue in a lot of our cities, especially as our cities change and gentrify. And I'm using gentrify in this case as not a bad way, but change and update. And what we see is that when there are areas of the city that were maybe, they're post-industrial areas or areas that were heavily industry-based that are shifting, well, sometimes the first people to go into those undesirable areas at times, or those transitioning areas, are cultural assets, whether it's a art gallery from a former electric factory turned art gallery or turned club, and it starts.
Yeah, a lot of garages, a lot of
garages. Oh man, car garages are like the new thing. Like you turn them into an art gallery or a club or all these things. That aren't soundproof, because when these buildings and structures were built, they were built in a place where it was all industry. Like everybody was making noise during that time. There wasn't residential there. And they revitalize these areas, right? And they make these new areas hot, whether it's downtown, the arts district, or whatever. We have areas here. And so then, of course, once an area gets hot and the people are going, now people want to live in proximity to the cultural assets, the museums, the clubs, the bars, the restaurants. They want to live next to them now, and residential comes in. And then what happens if you do not regulate? And I'll give you the solution here in a second that most of my counterparts are trying to implement in their cities around the world. If you do not regulate, you get these people who move in thinking it's hot and cool to be to the proximity, and then complain about what the area is, the people, the parking, the noise, like. But, again, these developers...
It's like, what did you think you were moving into, y'all?
But again, the onus is on two parts, right? And we have this thing that we told around that most of my counterparts around the world and the country, that we understand as the solution for that is what we call agent of change. And an agent of change is a development or zoning law, which says the last person to the block needs to mitigate the character of the neighborhood or the street or the noise or whatever. Meaning, if there is a club that has been there for 10, 20 years and you are building a residential development across from the club, it is on you to mitigate the sound. You need to do thicker pane windows. You need to do, soundproofing stuff. And if you're saying, hey, this 1,000-bedroom apartment, thicker pane windows might make this project unfeasible, well, then you can soundproof the club. You can say, hey, we're going to invest in your venue and soundproof. And so agent of change is a very popular way to ensure that we're preserving the cultural identity of neighborhoods, because it's the reverse too, right? Let's say you have a residential neighborhood and it's starting to get a little bit more poppy and culturally, and you want to put a club on a corner. Well, if it was residential first, you as the venue need to mitigate the sound, right? And that's how cities are starting to realize, like, we do an intentional development where we make sure that people can coexist at both of those things. So in Vegas, if you're having that debate, it needs to be that, hey, developer, I get that you want to come in this great, changing, popular neighborhood where we have gotten rid of the sound abatement or, nuisance sound law. You need to make the investment to make sure that your property is better. The other part, which is like a splitting of the baby of this part, where, in Scottsdale, Arizona, they did, which is really great, is they do lease and deed addendums. So meaning, okay, great. If you don't want to, the soundproofing or whatever, you still want to build in this neighborhood. Well, there are lease and deed addendums that people who are buying or renting in this neighborhood have to sign and say, I understand there is no noise ordinance in this neighborhood.
Yeah.
And then once you sign that, you are not allowed to utilize city services to complain. And so, if the noise abatement is say, hey, they can go till 4 a.m., you sign that lease or deed in them, you cannot call 311 or the city to complain because you acknowledge that you knew you were moving into an area that had a different expectation of noise, sound, and people moving.
And that's a model that you know about from Scottsdale and maybe some other spots too?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. Well, what's so smart about that, Raheem, and I will just say this, there are lots of smart people in our city government, working in licensing and planning and all that stuff. But, they leave at 5, right? And and all our electeds are kind of, home in bed too. To have someone in a position like yours who can sort of do all the things that we just talked about, negotiate, mediate, translate, these type of things for solutions does really seem to be a necessity more than a luxury.
Yeah.
How did Philly live without you, sir?
I ask that question a lot when I'm solving some issues or problems. But listen, our electeds are smart and they try to do the things that they think is best, and they also try to do what the constituents or the residents want. Right? That's what a city is. That's what government is. We're trying to make a place where everyone can feel invested in. Right? And that's what our electeds are doing. But a lot of times, businesses, specifically businesses of entertainment base, kind of get left out of that conversation and thought process sometimes because, taking it back to the Vegas example and your arts corridor that you guys created, there's, 20, 30, 50 businesses there at max. Most of those business owners probably don't live in that district. But when you look at an elected, they're putting 1,000-bedroom apartment across the street. That's 1,000 plus
the challenge
people
is
who
there.
are there.
The challenge is there.
So the voices of the 1,000 are going to be a lot louder than the voices of the 50, 60 businesses that may be there. And so sometimes you need someone that comes in that can give equal footing to the voices, right? Hey, I know it's 60 businesses here, but these 60 businesses bring in X amount of income. They're the reason that the 1,000 are moving there. Let's not make sure that, because the 1,000 are louder, we make laws that support and benefit them. And then it's at the cost of the 60 businesses that revitalize this area. So, you have to sometimes have that translating happen. That's there, right?
Right on point. And I think the business owners would be well served as opposed to, doing protests to gathering up financial data and statistics about how much they do contribute and generate, et cetera,
Yeah.
Let me ask you, Raheem, have you ever been to Las Vegas?
Hey, listen, I have been to Vegas more times than I will admit on this show. I know Vegas very well. Even when you started talking about the
Ain't
district,
no
I said, I've been
shame
down to,
in Las Vegas visits.
I've been down to Fremont. I actually don't even, listen, when I go to Vegas now, I hit Fremont Street and, the old Vegas and downtown more than I hit the Strip now because I'm that seasoned of a Vegas guy. But yes, I love the city. I love what you guys have going
I
there.
love to hear that because, a lot of people think of us just as two streets, but there's so, I mean, we're a town of 2.3 million people, that's a lot. And we do have 3 shifts, and it is a lot of casino workers and hotel workers, but they get off their shift and they want to go somewhere too, and have their time, right? Vegas is kind of unique that way when it comes to our nightlife economy. We are 24/7-ish, and we have a ton of economic activity going on after dark. And we seem to be doing all right. So, what do you think a nighttime mayor could add to our city?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunity there, right? Vegas is a global city that people know that you come, you have a good time. And, it's a city that truly never sleeps. And I really appreciate that. I'm a night owl. I mean, again, prior to the role,
Obviously.
I'm just like a night owl guy, right?
Yeah.
But I think some of the things that, we have to look at in Vegas, if I was to, let's say, put on my Nightmare Vegas hat, is that I would look to make sure that there's an equitable nighttime economy in Vegas, right? Because we think about, a lot of times, the clubs and the bars and the people going out and having fun. But what about the people that are working those shifts, right? One of the things I try to do here in Philly and I raise awareness is that, an equitable city is that if you work at 2 a.m. or 2 p.m., you have access to quality eats. If you work at 2 a.m., right, and you go home and you send your kids off to school with a breakfast, and if you didn't have a chance to shop, you could be able to go to a grocery store and get groceries, right? If you work at 2 a.m. and you're a business owner or just a person who's working the third shift or at the casino or at the club, and you need to ask an issue about your water bill or your tax bill or engage the city for something, you should have that resources. Because right now, most of our cities are set up where the city closes at 5. And so if I work at night, I operate at night, and I need to engage the city for any services or support, I have to sacrifice sleep to do so. But yet, David, you and I, it's 2:30 on the East Coast. It's, 12 over there, 11 over there. If we wanted to take a break right now, we can go get something to eat. It'll be catered to our dietary restrictions, right? If I wanted to get something vegan or something fresh, if I needed to go shopping, if I needed to run to the store, the mall, the bank, I need to deposit cash. We have all those options, but we don't provide those options for our third shift workers who are most vulnerable. You're talking about casino workers. You're talking about people that work in hospitality, heavily tipped, and everybody knows, who have to traverse cross cities at night under the cover of darkness, who don't have a place to put their money in the bank before they go home. So people know their work, they're carrying this cash. And so therefore they're using Uber instead of the public transportation that they should be able to use because they want to feel safer. And so, in Vegas with such a heavy third shift of workers, how are we making sure that they are feeling equitable and thought about? Because they pay just as much taxes as the people that work during the day. And they contribute to the economy and to the culture of the city just as much as people work during the day. But yet we close doors on them at 5.
Yeah. In the olden days, my dad was a car dealer. In the olden days of Vegas, when we were a lot smaller, I think they did cater a lot more to the graveyard shift. There were a lot more options because it was a smaller town. And also, we didn't have as specialized options as we do nowadays. There wasn't going to be a vegan place day or night, in Las Vegas in 1978, right?
Yeah.
So, but now, the daytime has all these wonderful offerings. And what you're saying is that maybe we need to kind of go back to drawing board and remember, our grave shift are people too. And they are citizens who contribute to the economy, but also deserve all the amenities. I hope people who are listening to this, your words are resonating. And I want to invite you to come to Vegas. I want to be your mentee. I want to follow you around, and I want to apply for this job, man. You make it sound like it's the missing link for us to really thrive as a community. I love it.
Yeah, listen, and I think the other thing is, that myself and my counterparts around the world do is that we also show that, the nighttime economy is an asset that can be grown if invested in, right? We have a $26.1 billion nighttime economy here in the city of Philadelphia. But imagine if we strategically and intentionally invested in growing that, right? We live in a global world now. Vegas competes with Ibiza. Vegas competes with Amsterdam. Philly competes with Madrid. Philly competes with London. We are, competing for global, tourism and movement and people living and coming and playing and working in our cities. And the way you do that is by investing in your assets. And so, here in Philly, I continually, ring the bell and talk to our electeds about investing in our nighttime economy, whether it's programming, through growth, through zoning laws that are not restrictive, but also empowering, making sure that our businesses that are operating at night see the city as a partner and that we see them as assets to grow and bring people to our city. I think Vegas understands that in an aspect that, they're competing, but how intentional is the investment? Because a lot of times when we're talking about nighttime economy, the cultural part, the clubs part, the bars part, they happen in lieu of the city. The city's so busy to regulate. Hey, you can't drink here. You can't do this. You can't be open that late. You can't. But what are we telling these businesses you can do and we invite you to do? And so I think that's something that you can take and run with in any city.
All right. Well, I'm going to start crafting my own little sash. I'm going to not be official. I'll be the unofficial
David the nighttime mayor. I love it. I think it has a ring.
For downtown anyway.
Yeah.
Hey, Raheem, I really appreciate you. And thank you so much for joining us today on CityCast Las Vegas. We'll see you in Vegas when you come.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me. And trust me, I will be in Vegas pretty soon.
Hey, before you go, I have a bit of a favor to ask. I know that you might have taken it last year, but CityCast is doing our annual listener survey, and it would really help us out if you took it. We can't use last year's data. Got to keep it fresh for you. So it only takes 7 minutes, but not only are you helping us out, you can get some stuff. So go to citycast.fm/survey and you'll be eligible to win a $250 Visa gift card and some sweet CityCast Las Vegas swag. So head on over to citycast.fm/survey. That's all for today here on CityCast Las Vegas. If you enjoyed the show, hey, go tell a friend. You could also rate our show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our morning newsletter, even if you read it overnight. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Till then, stay lucky. Now, when you show up, do you have like a badge or a sash or something that indicates that you are indeed the nightmare?
No, I mostly go off reputation and introductions. People are aware that we have it. I mean, I have a city badge, but I don't show up like the police. I'm not compliance.